first thing we want to check is how correlated are these things, because if people's income move always together, then in some sense it's hopeless to try to know what's going on, because the two are going to look very similar. Okay, so this is the empirical exercise we are interested in. We are interested in how close are we to this rather than that, and we are interested in that by we're particularly interested in the scenario where to make sure that these things are pretty independent. So it turns out that the first thing they want to check is in the data how independent. So this is I don't love this picture, I'll tell you, but but if you look, it has all the data. So essentially every household is kind of here, and this is sort of on this side is household number. So take a household is a point here, and then these are years. And the main point to see is that when this household is going up, this household is going down. So there's a lot of idiosyncratic movement in that. Stare at that for a minute. These three-dimensional plots, some people find more intuitive than me. But it does do, rather than writing a bunch of standard deviations, it kind of, if you can read it in 3 dimensions. This is another village. This one's a bit easier to read. But you can see that basically spikes here. This is a trough and this is a peak. So when these are two households, when this one has a trough, this has a peak. They're moving in opposite directions. So when you look at consumption, so the next thing we're going to do is
And all this variations coming from, this is all agricultural, so it's just these are sort of microclimatic?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So I think it's not all agricultural. So these villages are kind of like a lot of the income, lot of the households are in agriculture, but many of the households have some non-agricultural income. So they might be working in some construction project somewhere nearby or something. So it's a combination of all of those things. So there is some of it is microclimatic, which is that, you know, even though you live in the same village, you have different kinds of soil, and some soil is particularly good for a crop that grows with lots of rain, and some soil is particularly good for a crop that grows with little rain. And a little rain year, the relative change in income is maybe everybody benefits when there's more rain, but some people benefit a lot more because they have the right kind of soil. So that's going to show up as idiosyncratic variation. There will be a year effect, which is a good rainfall effect, will have a higher income for everybody. But relative to the year effect, some people are going to do very well in that year because they have the right kind of soil, and some people are going to do, you know, only marginally better than in other years. But also, I think many of these households work in construction projects, and maybe this year there was a big construction project nearby and a bunch of us got a job, but those who don't have any free labor don't take advantage of those. So there's all kinds of things going on here. Yeah?
How realistic is the assumption that there is no savings, so income or earnings is equal to consumption? So
it's also a good question. We don't need that assumption. So far, what we've been assuming is, so the nature of the exercise we are doing is we are pushing our luck. So we're saying, imagine that people are, imagine there was no savings and borrowing and savings, then people would be able to, the best people could do would be to go to a sort of share all incomes. In addition, if they could borrow and save, then even if they didn't share their incomes, they might still be able to smooth some. So what we're asking is, in net, how big is variation in consumption relative to variation in income. So this relationship would not hold perfectly in a world where if people could borrow and save, but we're not perfectly willing to insure, then we will get some weight on this and some weight on that. So we're trying to just look at what happens on aggregate. How far are we from perfect insurance? That's the only question we're trying to answer. And we're not making the claim that insurance is happening only through insurance. It could be happening through borrowing and saving, could be having through maybe there's some other external mechanism. So when your income goes down, the government comes and gives you some food. All of those things we can't rule out here. We're just trying to see, is it the case that consumption varies a lot less than income?